big button that says
Did you hear that?
"Do."
It said recording in progress. Okay, so we're on. Scott, welcome.
Thanks, Justin.
Okay, so thanks for your time. We are doing a Sunday where we're going to talk about church planting, and we're going to try to show the video and give out giving envelopes to individuals in the congregation and try to push the 40 and 10 vision. And so what I wanted to do is get the interview with you to kind of highlight one of our favorite church plants in the presbytery, one of the top ones, just to with a great, I mean, it's a great, I feel it's a great story, and we need to, our guys need to know it and get to know you guys and be partners with you here in Oklahoma. So, okay, so that's all, that's kind of why we're doing it. So just give you an intro.
Okay.
And I know you're just very, very, accommodating to take the time and do this, even though I didn't give you very much warning on what we wanted to do or what we're doing. So, but thanks for being flexible. All right, so Scott, did you get my questions?
Yes, I did. I got your questions. Thanks, Justin.
Okay, gotcha. Well, let's start out with can you just tell us the story of how did this all happen? How did you get to how did you called to plant the church there in Claremore, and what led to it, and how'd you get there?
Yeah. So, just a little bit of background about me and my wife. We're both Texans, born and raised. I went to the what at the time was the Extension campus of Westminster Seminary in
Hmm?
Dallas. My wife went to Dallas Seminary. After that, we had served in Reformed University Fellowship for 9 years in Pennsylvania, uh, which is great. But at some point, most people kind of phase out of just simply like just college ministry. Not that it's bad, but kids get older, a lot of priorities change, and we were looking to get closer to family. I've had some family historically in the southeast part of Oklahoma. All of our family was in Texas, and so we began looking, and came about that there was an associate pastor position open in Owasso, so that's a northern suburb of Tulsa. The church itself is a PCA church that had been started, I believe, in 2011. It became its own organized and particularized church in 2013. And then within 2 years, they had planted a church. They were in the process of planting another church. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to come and learn more about church planting. I didn't know if that was going to be on the horizon, really and truly. Only God would know. But I thought this is a good place for me to come and learn. And as it turned out, it was. It was a good place for me to come and learn and to see. Being in Oklahoma is really interesting to see. It's not the buckle of the Bible Belt, but there's a whole lot of people who profess to be Christians. Um, However, there are very few churches that are consistently preaching the gospel of grace,
Hmm.
and the dearth of those churches is pretty evident just after a short while in Oklahoma. We began, I began serving. One of the things I was doing in that PTA church was I was over all of the community groups, and we had a community group that we had formed in Claremore. So Claremore is about 20 minutes, 25 minutes east of Owasso. And Claremore itself is not a suburb of
Hmm.
Tulsa. It really is kind of its own independent town of about 20,000. Well, we had one of our community groups that was meeting there, all populated with people from Claremore who were driving into Owasso to go to church. And we really began to ask the question, what is the Lord leading us to do a plant? There's very little, again, Claremore is like everywhere else, very little, I would say, healthy gospel influence from a lot of the churches. A lot of smaller churches that are just struggling to get by, and certainly, really almost zero Presbyterian Reformed influence. Um, and this is kind of a red flag for me. There's no reason to plant churches if there's 10 churches just like you already there. And
Hmm.
it certainly wasn't the case. We began meeting, as a community group. And for about 9 months, met, prayed. This is really kind of the original core group of Red Bud. And, would the Lord have us do this? Really, toward the end of that process, we began to see that, yeah, we really do think that the Lord is leading us in this direction. Church planting is always a risk. It's a risk, of course, for the planter and his family, but it's a risk for the people who are initially involved as well. No one wants to hop on a sinking ship, as it were. And so we knew the risk, but we thought it was worth it, because this could be an outpost for future church plants as well, and some even less sparse, or more sparse, more countryside towns in eastern Oklahoma. And we ended up getting hooked up with the ARP through King's Cross in Sapulpa. It was really kind of our introduction, because we had no idea really what the ARP was about. We had an opportunity to host a couple of the pastors from the ARP's Florida Presbytery. Sandra Klein and Tom Hawks flew up to meet with our core group. You, Justin, were there. Cody Wampler, one of your elders, was there. And we really kind of got to hear the pitch about why the ARP. What's the vision for the ARP, for the Florida Presbytery in that? And that meeting, it was really funny. That meeting went from us just kind of wanting to know to almost all of you four guys making a sales pitch to us. It would have felt like a little bit. By far, the best sales pitch though was from Cody, so that was great. But it was encouraging, because one of the things that we left there with several thoughts, but one of the really striking things was, hey, these guys are serious about planting churches. I would say we hadn't received that sort of eagerness from other denominations. Not that we were out shopping, but for instance, even the church planter assessment that I went to was in the PCA. Lots of flying colors, and they were more than happy. So yeah, we can plant a church. If you want to plant a church in Claremore, that's fine. But there wasn't, I would say, a larger vision associated with it. Tanner, Tom, you, and Cody said, okay, here's our vision for what we see. We want to see ARP churches grow in Oklahoma, so Oklahoma becomes its own presbytery. We want to see return to planting in our denomination, which it happened 200 years ago, 150 years ago. And everyone at that meeting, I mean, we got behind it. We said, yeah, we believe the Lord is leading us there. It made for an interesting time, kind of in that month and a half transition. And then I flew to Florida, got examined for my transfer exam. We were accepted as a mission third, and then I flew back home and kind of told the people, I guess we're in the ARP now. I guess we're a church plant. So that coincided with like the very end of my time at the PCA Church in Owasso. They were so gracious about us leaving, because all of the people that we took, it was 6 families total, including us. But it was their families, right? And they encouraged us and said, please, I mean, this is needed. They helped us financially at first. So it was a great thing.
What a blessing.
So we had gotten started in that way, and started out with that, little core group of 6 families, and continued meeting in homes probably for another 4 or 5 months. And then we found a place to lease, started meeting, and we just have grown consistently since then. Got to see the Lord's hand in so many different things. Just how he's blessing it.
Well, so what was the original? What was that meeting? What year was that?
That
2022?
was, yeah, it was in 21, I believe. I think
Yeah,
it was
December.
December of 21.
Yeah,
Hmm.
December 21. Yeah, very. So yeah, and the ARP has been on the ground in Oklahoma for less than 10 years. Like
Yeah,
minimum 7 or 8 years on the ground, and so much is happening, in
yeah,
that time. So
yeah. And it really did. It took one church, Trinity in Norman, to start the ball rolling.
yeah,
Say, hey, we're out here,
yeah,
and really put in um, a lot of the legwork and people work, and I mean, executing some of the vision. And to say we don't want to be just by ourselves. We want to see we want to see the ARP expand
yeah,
in the state because
and
we believe,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, because not only do we believe like in a Presbyterian Reformed
mhm,
worldview, but we believe this little slice of Presbyterianism is unique enough that it deserves the church plan, men and money and effort.
amen, yeah. And so yeah, Presbyterianism in general is kind of a slow process to do almost anything, but the Lord's been doing some more extraordinary things in a very short amount of time in your church and in our church and throughout the state. So we're looking forward to seeing more of that in the future. So I'll ask you this, Scott. What is kind of the vision? What do you think the future holds out there in Claremore? What's the future look like? I mean, are y'all looking at organizing or how long what's the timeline on that?
So we're not looking to organize within the next year.
Hmm.
We're looking to organize in the next 12 to 24 months.
Gotcha. Yeah.
There's really no rush. We have a great provisional session. The provisional session is set by the presbytery who's over
Hmm.
a church plant. We don't have elders from inside our church, and
Hmm.
you know this process, Justin.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but we have a great provisional session who shares the vision for not just Red Bud, but for all the ARP churches in
Hmm.
Oklahoma, just really championing church planting. So, I mean, where we want to see ourselves down the road, ideally, within 5 years, we'd love to take on an associate pastor who is a church planting apprentice.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what the number, what that numbers would be as far as the congregation, but maybe 150, 170 people and send out 50 people
Yeah.
to be a part of the next church plant. And I mean, we're praying, and we've been praying for 2 years that God would make it clear in due time where
Yeah.
that needs to be. I mean, it could be more out in the country, it could be down more in the suburbs. We'll just see who he brings and
Yeah.
how he's going to answer that prayer. But uh, this is something that we talk about. Probably folks at Red Bud might even get tired of hearing about it from me. Like this is when you sign up to be a member of Red Bud, this is what you're signing up for. You're
Yeah.
signing up to be a church that wants to plant other churches.
Amen.
And we're absolutely serious, not about getting bigger in an individual church, but seeing these churches
Mhm.
plant.
Yeah. It's about getting healthy, right? Being able to produce,
Yeah.
yeah, and send out and be a part of the mission. That's beautiful. So I appreciate your clear vision on that, Scott. That's really awesome. And I think anyone who hears this ought to be like, hey, we could do that too, Like our church could do
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Any church could have that kind of vision if they just keep talking about it, keep praying and get it laid out there. That's
Yeah.
really, really sweet. I love it. Well,
And
so
can
why
let me, before you move on to the next one, let me just
yeah.
do like a little selling point,
Oh
even
yeah.
more on this vision. So
Okay.
we're in a state where a lot of churches are very big. It's very common for a church to be over 500, even 1,000, some
Hmm.
even over 5,000 or 10,000, right?
Hmm.
Like, I wonder what it would look like if instead of growing bigger, those churches planted, like a church of 5,000 planted 20 churches. Uh, and the impact that would have regionally, as opposed to everyone kind of flocking to a Mecca, you know, it opens up so many different opportunities for evangelism,
Hmm.
for more specific like training of officers. When I say training of officers, I don't mean men who are there, but you're talking about like really identifying high schoolers, college students, and shepherd them along, which it's so much more difficult to do that in a larger church setting. In addition to just being in the neighborhoods, being in the towns where we go to church. So many people travel a long way to go to church. It's really set roots. I've wondered that many times, especially driving through Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and you see these giant churches. What are we like? They said, now our vision is to plant 10 churches in just the next 2 years. I think it would be remarkable. I really do. And, who knows what the Lord's going to do? We probably won't be churches of thousands or 5,000. We don't want to be. We want to be a church, smaller churches, planting more churches and continuing out. This is a real model of like a parish model, the way that for centuries viewed the church.
Yeah. It's just a quick little add on to this that really inspired me is a book called William Steele called The Work of the Pastor. Scott, you read that? It's a Sinclair Ferguson recommendation, and I remember at the end of that book, he's talking about how when people would visit his church, he was this famous expository preacher, very powerfully used by the Lord, and they had sent out so many people in the whole course of that ministry. I think he preached the Bible like twice. I mean, the whole he is preaching all the time the Bible. Well, people would visit and they'd be like, wait, is this all there is? Like it's like so many, it was like such a small group, and it's like, because they gave away people and send them all over the world and plant churches, and people like, I guess our mindset is just bigger's better, keep on, accumulating a bigger building and more people. Not necessarily. No, I imagine that the Spirit could work in developing people and his kingdom in a better way, in a different way, but maybe even better if we were to take your model.
That's a great historical example.
Yeah. If there were more, times that anyway, that's okay. So you kind of answered this, but give me just a few sentences on why plant more churches rather than just continuing to develop the church that you're in. Why plant more churches? What's the big reason?
There's several reasons for it. If you look at it historically, if you read the church planting books that have been written over the last 30 years, they're pretty consistent in saying that the churches who are most aggressive in planting churches are themselves church plants. It's not churches who have been there for 50 or 100 years. Just historically, in the 21st and 20th century, those churches don't plant churches. So if we want to see churches being planted, it has to happen from churches who have been fairly recently planted, who carry the torch, who carry the vision. And I did talk about it a little bit, but the benefit of church planting, it's interesting. When we read Matthew 28, we talk about the Great Commission. A lot of times when we hear that, and probably for a long time in my life, I heard that and I immediately individualized it for myself. Right? To go make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them. Okay. But the Great Commission, first and foremost, was given to the church, capital C church. Okay. Because individuals we're not supposed to baptize. Right. That's supposed to be the ministers who are doing that. So individuals are necessarily excluded from some of that already.
Right.
But when Jesus gives the Great Commission, he is giving it to the leaders of the church. Right. So for us to be faithful to the Great Commission, it's not just merely a work of the individual, it's the work of the church. To go, and that's a command, but to go and do this. Now, how does it work? Practically speaking, we can see this in the book of Acts. We see it especially in Paul's pastoral epistles. How did Paul execute? How did he execute this vision that Jesus had? Well, he just went around and planted churches, right? It wasn't through conferences. I mean,
Yeah.
assuming they could have done conferences.
Hmm.
It wasn't through finding good means of transportation to get more people into just one locale.
Right.
Abe planted churches really wherever he was. He's the great first planter. So going around, and in that way, we see, I think, a really good picture of like 1 Corinthians 12 through 14, where Jesus gives he gives gifts to his body, right? And each individual church is an expression of that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Of these
Mm-hmm.
particular gifts that Jesus gives, so that it's full and complete. And it gives opportunity for, I would say, for people to be ministered to more holistically, right? You're in a church that's been planted and they've planted, and you can I mean, it's part of the psyche, part of the ethos of the church. Like, it's just more likely you're going to be known,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're going to be shepherded and pastored. You're going to be pushed to something outside of yourself. For instance, like church planting,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's more imperative that you be salt and light where you are,
Yeah.
like in your neighborhood, with with other parents on your kid's softball team or soccer team or what have you, because it unites us to a grander vision, not just with, oh, that's the church where I go.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we're a part of something even greater.
Mm-hmm.
Christians planting churches, um, and like we're for this. We're pouring resources, people that have been trained, money, time, so much prayer over it. And then historically, I mean, we can't look into church history and see some of the greatest movements of evangelism that have happened through church planting. Not to denigrate someone like Billy Graham, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he did an amazing job.
Sure.
Tens of thousands came to Jesus through him. But it's important for those people who do come to Christ land in healthy churches.
Right.
And
No,
I
that's right.
really do think that the only way that they can happen is through church planting.
Man, thank you, Scott. That is so helpful because, it's like you and I, we've had great experiences with Reformed University Fellowship, in your experience, God's blessed you with a church that's planted churches and you got to see that firsthand. And I feel like a lot of times it's something that's very foreign to people to think about church planting because church is kind of the thing I go to. And then,
Right.
it's like it continually builds up and builds up and builds. So it's very foreign, but we kind of take for granted that people know what it is. But to have your very clear explanation of why planting and what it involves is very helpful. And I think this would be very valuable for our
Yeah,
church to hear.
this should, I really do think the way that the New Testament envisions it is
Hmm.
this should be the normal course of life for the church
Hmm.
to plant other churches.
Yeah.
Even when we send out missionaries, we're not sending out missionaries just to do like bare evangelism. We're
Hmm.
sending them out to plant churches.
Yep.
To
Definitely.
plant,
Definitely.
for lack of a better term, to plant a flag for Jesus, to
Yeah.
grow a church there, and out of that, plant another church, and on and
Definitely.
on.
The moon landing was a failure because we just put our flag up there and didn't continue on. It's like
Right.
we didn't plant a church
Yeah.
up there. So we got to go and plant the flag and then develop the church. That's what we got to do. So
Yeah.
okay, so yeah,
Hopefully we'll get there. Elon Musk is working on that. So.
that's right.
Okay.
SpaceX. We got a space force now. We can do some things. Okay,
Yeah,
so
we do.
numbered. Okay, so we've talked about why plant churches, and part of the goal of the church is, like you said, to baptize and to teach the Great Commission. So, if you could you give me some stories of sort of reaching people for Christ through the planting of the church? I mean, you've been in it a couple of years now, so any thoughts on the evangelism component or the reaching people through planting?
Yeah, you know what? What's interesting is I kind of think about that question. I've had so many conversations with people that um, would just simply would not have happened
Yeah.
if I were still an associate pastor in the town next door.
Yep.
Just being in and among people in the community.
Yeah.
I mean, whether this is just people at a coffee shop or restaurant, folks that work on like I had a couple guys today come in and they had to replace the whole air conditioner and furnace. It was a big mess. like opportunities to talk with them. Some of them, I mean, to talk about what really drives you, what
Hmm.
motivates you to get out of bed, like what brings meaning to your life. Uh, it just simply wouldn't happen if the church plant didn't happen. Just simply
Yep.
boots on the ground. But we've seen different fruit from some of this. There's one story. I was challenged. It was about 2 years ago. I was challenged by a church planter in the PCA. I think he planted 8 churches.
Wow.
Um, and he said, he goes, every day, so before you go out, before you leave, just ask the Lord to give you a divine appointment for evangelism. What he
Hmm.
called it. So I started doing that, and it got to the point where it's happening every time I went out.
Yeah.
Um, it was interesting. Let's say maybe the second time I prayed for it in a coffee shop, and it was one of these. There's a lot of chairs, kind of around, comfy chairs, not a sterile like a Starbucks or some home
Hmm.
home hometown coffee shop, and a woman probably 30 years older than me had a table, and I was trying to work on my laptop on a chair, and it just wasn't working. And she offered, "Do you want to share my table?" So I said, "Sure, sounds great." So we got to talking, and come to find out she's Catholic. Her husband is our uh, state representative for this area,
Hmm.
and he had just a couple days previous had been diagnosed with cancer. I had about a month previous I unexpectedly lost my mom, and so
Mm.
we had this opportunity to sit. And she and I sat and talked for 2.5 hours. We talked about the gospel. We talked about hope.
Yeah.
Uh, talked about. I mean, we talked about you know how do we as Christians process
Hmm.
evil and suffering in the world versus how do non-Christians process that. What's the difference? How does a Protestant faith look at it differently than a Catholic faith? Um, and I'm still praying that they'll leave their Catholic church and come to Red Bud. Hasn't happened yet, but it's given so many. I've followed up with her many times. We've seen each other,
Hmm.
um, but just sowing the seed, right? Who knows how that's going to be reaped? But that's just one example
Yeah.
of just simply praying and doing that. And we've seen one of the cool things uh, is about Red Bud is where we're at right now. We on a given Sunday we've got about 42 kids under the age of 11.
Wow.
So tons, tons of kids. And what this what this means is a lot of those kids uh, are in that phase where they profess the faith.
Hmm.
And so I've met with so many families. Like even in December, I think we had 10 or so professing to faith
Hmm.
just from our children. And I mean, it, we view the Bible covenantally. God's a covenantal God, but it's amazing to see His faithfulness. These these children really owning their
Hmm.
own faith. One of the questions I always ask the children when I interview them, and it's a hard question to ask. I think it's a hard question for the parents to hear. But I always ask the children, if your mama and daddy decided to stop going to church, decided that they don't love Jesus anymore, would you still want to go to church? And invariably, they all say yes,
Yeah.
because I do love Jesus,
Yeah.
and He wants me to be with His church. And so um, seeing children respond in faith, to see fruits, of faith and repentance in
Right.
their life, um, doing baptisms. And we've had a couple of like full family baptisms last year. It delights my soul that so many of these things just wouldn't happen if the church plant didn't exist.
Amen. Yeah. You're out there. Jesus is saving people because we're planting churches and you have to be, you're asking for divine appointments and he's granting those divine appointments. I've seen it in my experience as well. Appreciate that answer. Can you give me a little bit about how the saints at Red Bud Pres and Claremore are growing in grace, or they're developing their gifts for ministry, being a part of the church plant? Have you seen that kind of happening, or becoming leaders?
Yeah, I
Or
have. We've got probably similar to Trinity.
Mhm.
We've got just an interesting group of folks. Our core group, they were all members at a
Mhm.
PCA church.
Yep.
Um, three of the guys were basically deacons, so they were officers. So
Oh
not,
yeah.
Reformed and Presbyterian view of things is not new. And then it's two of our earliest families that we picked up. Uh, like one had really kind of been out of the church completely for 10 years, and their background was very minimal Baptist. Um, Another one had been out of the church for about 5 years.
Mhm.
And so seeing them kind of come in, and I do think, and this is from many conversations with them, but also seeing how the Lord has grown them. Like, this is the first time they've been in a church where the Bible is taught consistently.
Mhm.
And nothing magical.
Mhm.
No one's ever gonna ask me to speak at a conference, probably. Right? I'm not. I mean, I'm passable. I'm an okay preacher, but just if I liken it to a baseball analogy, like what a preacher has to do every week is get up. He's got to make contact with the ball, right? He's not trying to hit a home run. You just make contact because the power is
Move the
not
base runner along. Move the base runner along. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The power's not enough. It's in God's
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
We get up, be as faithful as we can with it, and it's just amazing how many people say, "I didn't know this. I didn't realize this."
Yeah.
And then seeing, praying for it and then seeing God at work in them to, and we've seen this really kind of where the rubber meets the road, and people suffering,
Mhm.
losing, parents, who passed away, dealing with cancer.
Mm.
I mean, just things that really kind of shake you.
Yeah.
Um, and seeing how they cling to Christ, and even just
Right.
hearing, how that would have been different even 2 years ago. How
Sure.
the reaction is just
Yeah.
entirely different now. And also, in the church plant, one of the things I love kind of about the early days, and we're still, I would say, in the early days, is just the sheer amount of time that I can spend with people, and especially with men, and training them,
Mhm.
whether this is formally in a group study or just informally, sitting down and identifying, hey, here's areas that I think you can grow in, and I want to
Mhm.
work specifically with you on this. We haven't started officer training or anything yet, but I've identified a few guys and said, hey, I think you could like really grow in just
Mhm.
how you provide biblical counsel to people, possibly to be an elder. I want to bring you in to certain situations so you can see it, right? I'm going to
Nice.
teach you how to do it, and then I want to demonstrate
Yeah.
how that's done. You observe it, and then you begin to do it. You take over this.
Yeah.
While I'm in the room, so I can observe it, and then we evaluate. And
Yeah. And
so that's
encourage them even. Yeah.
encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I love it. It sounds great. This is this is a beautiful model of ministry. I mean, this is amazing. You're doing a great job, Scott. We're running out of time. We got about 5 minutes. So this has been a very, I'm probably just gonna play this conversation for the Sunday school class and let them listen in and ask questions about the conversation. But I really appreciate you giving so many good answers here. So how I guess give me how can churches support you, or how can we pray for you specifically? What are some specific prayer requests that you have?
Yeah, so I'll do the specific prayer requests. Uh, the biggest by far is we're out of space where we're
Hmm.
meeting.
Hmm.
It can hold. It's uncomfortable right now. We have 75 to 85
Hmm.
on a Sunday, and if we pack things in and like people sit on, like kids sit on the floor, maybe 90 to 100.
Yeah.
We have kids sit on the floor most Sundays just to kind of make room. But it's really it's really kind of one big room. We have a nursery that's about 10 feet by 8 feet,
Right.
about 80 square feet.
Hmm.
Most of our kids are in the service, fortunately, but we still have 8 to 10 kids
Hmm.
in that back nursery during the service.
Yeah.
One very small restroom. We're just maxed out,
Yeah.
and we need a new place.
Sure.
And almost all church plants get into the situation in which um, they're too big for the space that they're in. They
Right.
don't have enough money
Yeah.
to rent the space that they need,
Yes.
right? So those two things do go hand in hand, but at the same time, I mean, the Lord can do whatever He wants.
Right.
And He could just absolutely make something available that'll knock our socks off. We
Hmm.
saw Him do that with our sister ARP church in Sepulpa, where they
Hmm.
were looking for a place to meet and found something that was way below what they were thought that they might have to pay.
Hmm.
The facility way exceeded their expectations, and it was just completely the Lord doing that. So that's number one, it's faith.
Hmm.
Two, this just kind of comes with growing pains of a church, as I've talked to many people about it. Like in the early days when it's just a core group,
Hmm.
everything kind of runs like a mixture of democracy and anarchy together. Right? It's just beautiful. People get things done. They share the vision. As more and more people come in, they don't have the background in just life together and sharing the vision together, and it does create friction in some areas. And there's also a change to, to moving from the democracy of everything to creating teams and empowering those teams. And sometimes it gets messy. So you pray for success in that.
For
And
sure.
then how to going back to the first part of your question, how can people support?
Hmm.
You know, pray.
Hmm.
This is I'm not trying to baptize you. Absolutely, just pray.
Uh-huh.
Pray very specific prayers.
Yes.
You know, Lord, please give them a building that has X number of square feet that will accommodate X many people. Right?
Yep.
Jesus says, uh, "You don't have because you don't ask."
Hmm.
So let's ask for specific things, and who knows what the Lord will do. So that, and also the money. Money. I mean, it makes the world go round is the saying. But getting involved in the not only just kind of the local with the larger vision, like our Presbyterian 40 for 40, like
Yep.
supporting 40 church, excuse me, 40 for 10,
Yeah.
40 church plants in 10 years.
Hmm.
Um, Writing a check. I know you have talked about that with your congregation.
Hmm.
Being a part of that
Yeah.
is a really big deal. But I mean, prayer and financial support are really the two easiest and most significant ways
Right.
churches that are at least far away from each other can really help in the sport.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's great that it says we're less than a minute, so we may get cut off here. It may give us some grace. I don't know, but I hate to lose you. If I do lose you, I'll probably just call you and say thanks. But anyway, this is excellent. So you're saying pray for specific things, pray for the building, the right building, pray for the teams to develop, right, as it gets organized. And then also you mentioned supporting the vision, and our vision in the Presbytery, just to remind everybody, is that every church participating in planting churches,
Yes.
whether that's prayer, sending out a team, partnering with other